Good morning, everybody. I've been really blessed with great weather this whole Fukuoka trip. Today is sunny and hot, and I ran out of short sleeves, so I got long sleeve on here, but I think I'm gonna have to stay hydrated throughout the day. We're gonna start at a historical ramen shop here in Kita Kyushu City. After that, I'm going straight to another ramen shop that closes at 1:30, so I gotta rush to another part of the city, and then after that, we'll go from there.
Thanks for coming aboard the 5 AM Ramen train. 5 AM Ramen brings you the best ramen from Japan. I'm Frank, and ramen is in my blood, literally. We're not messing around in this episode. I'm ramen hungry, and we're visiting multiple ramen shops in Kita Kyushu City. This is the 6th episode in a Kyushu Ramen series. As mentioned, we're now in the north. Kita Kyushu means North Kyushu. I really ended up liking this lesser known city. Let's see what Kita Kyushu is all about. We're first visiting Tompuku. I'm very sorry to report though that Tompuku is now closed. It doesn't often happen that I visit a shop that ends up shuttered before a video comes out. I do though have a crazy amount of ramen video backlog, so I'm actually surprised this hasn't happened more often. It's interesting, I even spoke about how I expected that they wouldn't be around forever. Here's my recap of what was an amazing bowl at Tompuku. RIP.
Oh my god, I love that bowl at Tompuku. That was one of my all-time favorites for Tonkotsu Ramen. Oh, that was good. It was very simple, as you would expect from a shop with that much history, but it was just so good. Simple is best. It didn't have to try too hard, and it was so good. More so, let's say, than a pork bone broth where the bones have really been incorporated into the broth. This place actually uses a lot of lard, and that's where a lot of the rich flavor comes from. So it is quite oily and piping hot. You don't get tonkotsu ramen that's as hot as, of course, say, miso ramen, some other styles that are served piping hot in the north of the country, but this was quite hot temperature-wise. The noodles match the soup perfectly. They were bean sprouts for some crunch, which you don't see in tonkotsu ramen that often, as well as beautifully cut green negi. Good chashu pork, and that soup again with just such a wonderful flavor. Definitely feels like a shop of yesteryear on the inside too. Countertop seats on the right, on your left you have a small table area, and you verbally tell them what you want. Not too many ramen options, basically ramen, ramen omori, or with extra noodles. Oh, and if you want extra chashu pork too, the chashu man. On the countertop, you have beni shoga as well as sesame seeds. I personally always add beni shoga towards the end of the meal, and I don't always add sesame seeds, but do as you like. Customization is a fun part of the tonkotsu ramen experience. That was magical. Cute old couple that are running the place too. Unfortunately, they're probably not gonna pass it on to the next generation. I don't know if they have children or if anyone has expressed interest in becoming their apprentice, but it's one of those places that it's there now, but who knows, in 20 years, maybe even earlier, it might no longer be there. Tompuku is an important, delicious part of Kita Kyushu ramen history and ramen history in general. I moved my schedule around a little bit. The ramen shop on the other side of town is open until 30, but I'm just a relatively short walk away from another ramen shop I wanted to visit. Even though they're open later, I was like, I might as well go to this ramen shop since I'm making decent time. On my way there now for bowl number 2 of Tonkotsu Ramen here in Kita Kyushu City.
And bowl number 2 is at Isshiken. This is going to be a heavier one compared to Tompuku. And don't worry, Isshiken is still around today. Let's fast forward and get my thoughts on the ground regarding this bowl.
Okay, so the bowl at Isshiken, that was excellent too. It's a very different bowl. It was definitely more pork bone rich, thicker, also smellier. And what was very unique is that while you got this richness coming from the pork bones, not insanely rich mind you, but definitely on the richer side, there was this peppery kick in the background. And I feel like that peppery kick really kept the bowl grounded. So with any sip of the soup, you're like, wow, this is really rich. But then that black pepper flavor sort of brings everything back and provides welcome balance. You get quite a bit of noodles. They were similar to the noodles at the first place. The chashu pork slices were like a lot of chashu pork slices you see here. They weren't quite modern, but they were kind of in between being dry and tougher and also fatty and soft. What's interesting about this place is that they actually give you a little container with little beans, and below those beans are beni shoga, or red pickled ginger. I added the red pickled ginger. I did not add the beans. I don't know if their aim is for you to put those beans in the ramen or eat them by themselves. But yeah, kind of a quirky thing at this ramen shop. The vibe is also quite different because all the staff are young. You've got the master in the back there and a lot of staff helping him dish out the ramen, compared to just the two-person team, husband or wife, at Tonkotsu. Tasty, tasty bowl, and quite the contrast, going from a more classic-leaning one to a more modern approach. Okay, this is where I now have to run to the other side of town for a ramen shop that's open until 2:30. But after that, I'm gonna show all of you a little bit of a touristy area. It's supposed to be a beautiful view of essentially what connects the island of Honshu and also Kyushu. Consider it a nice port area.
Before that sightseeing I described, we're going to dive into a tonkotsu ramen spot called Keijun. Keijun emulates what's done in kurume, or let's say they're doing kurume style tonkotsu ramen. We were just in Kurume not too long ago in the series. Kurume is the birthplace of tonkotsu. Check out that video if you haven't already. And we're going to do a recap at the harbor area I've been going on and on about.
It's moments like these that put a smile on your face. I don't get too many moments like these when I'm running around a city or prefecture even, trying to eat at all the best ramen shops. But when I do have these moments, I do savor them as much as possible. I'm right now on the waterfront and have my iced coffee here and a great view. And here's a recap on Keiju, the last ramen shop that I visited. Now Keiju, very classic on the outside, on the inside. It's an old building. You can tell that locals love the place. The way that I was greeted by the lady that was working there was very much like casual, I guess you could say. And she was telling everyone that, sorry, they're out of other items. They only have ramen. In other words, they didn't have rice. I think they also serve onigiri, which is pretty common in this area. But I was like, that's fine. I'm here for the ramen. So I ordered the ramen, and this was very much a kurume style ramen. Now I was just in Kurume, and all the kurume markings were there. You had a buttery, richer soup, a thicker soup too. But I've had so much tonkotsu ramen the last few days. In a way, the pork bone ramen or tonkotsu ramen, it kind of all blends together. Now, of course, there are very distinct differences between certain styles, certain shops, of course, will do it differently. But interestingly enough, despite the buttery soup, what stood out the most to me were the noodles. Not because of their quality per se, but I was eating them and I'm just like, these are definitely kurume noodles. Kurume noodles are thicker than what we've seen today. They also have more water in them. So I saw those noodles and I was like, oh, that's right, we're at a kurume style ramen shop. Yeah, the bowl itself was not a huge bowl compared to the previous shop where there was a lot of noodles. But for that price, my God, and that's been a theme this whole trip, really affordable ramen. That was how much? $500 for the regular size, $4, a little bit over $4 for ramen, USD. Insane, very tasty, and always a bonus when you're in a historical ramen shop. This is another one of those places where you're not sure if they'll be around in another 10 years. There was actually a place that I bookmarked here in Kita Kyushu that unfortunately closed within maybe the last year or so. This doesn't happen too often. When I'm looking at my ramen map, I'm like, oh, you know, most of the places are open. Actually, everything is open. But this is one of the few times where I'm like, oh, that place is no longer there. It actually happened twice in Kita Kyushu, and one of them was this historical old ramen shop. But on a happy note, I was able to visit this place before perhaps that day might occur. Who knows? They might find somebody younger to take up the mantle. Hopefully I'm audible too. I'm competing with a loud air conditioner right above me. Anyways, this is a beautiful area. I'm gonna kick back a little bit. You've got the waterfront on one side, mountains on the other. And given that this city was an international port back in the day, you definitely get a strong port city vibe similar to that of Kobe, let's say, or Yokohama, where you have these old Western Japanese style architecture buildings. And in some parts, it feels more like a Western city than it does a Japanese one. Big fan of this area. I would say it's a hidden gem in Kita Kyushu, but everybody knows about this, and it's definitely a contrast considering that Kita Kyushu maybe does have that more industrial might sort of image. But here, this is a beautiful waterfront, and you don't have anything like this in Fukuoka. All right, back to my coffee and my reading, and I'm gonna map out one more ramen shop for the rest of the day. Then I've gotta jump on the train back to Fukuoka City.
Let's just say I'm glad I didn't do Kairyu first to start the day. Just look at that soup.
Okay, on my way to the fourth and final ramen shop of the day. Fifth, if you include yesterday here in Kita Kyushu. The name of the ramen shop is called Kairyu. Famous ramen shop here. Of course, I say this for every place, but it's true. This is another famous ramen shop. Saving the heaviest for last at Kairyu. Now, Kairyu also does a kurume style ramen, just like what we saw at Keijun, but their ramen is very different. Whereas Keiju was more smooth and buttery in flavor, like they've strained the broth a lot. Kairyu went in the opposite direction. It's almost like it was purposely gritty, even kind of dirty in a way. That's what they're going for. It's thick, it's rich, even bitter. It was kind of like if you did pork bone ramen in the way that they often do niboshi or dried sardine ramen, drying it and it tasting very bitter. Kurume style noodles, although these were drier than what we had at Keiju. And I find myself back on the river here. Appropriate way to end the video. So where was I? Also, the salt content in this ramen was on the higher side. It was quite salty. Keiju, you got the same thing. The salt content was high there too, but whereas there it was more of a shio or salt seasoning, here you had a soy sauce seasoning, hence the brown color. So it had this tanginess alongside that gritty pork bone broth. Oh, but it was an epic day. If you include last night, 5 bowls of ramen in total here in Kita Kyushu. At Gyorante, we had a sweeter, foamy style, modern pork bone ramen. Second stop, Tompuku, which I loved. Pork bone ramen with a little bit of fish accent in it. Maybe it was that hint of fish that made me love this one a lot just because of the Tokyo boy in me. And then shop number 3, Isshiken. There we had a pork bone ramen on the heavier side with that peppery background. Bowl number 4 was Keiju, that buttery rich kurume style ramen, but very smooth in flavor. And then last but not least, heaviest perhaps of them all, also kurume style ramen, but with a more gritty, concentrated pork bone flavor at Kairyu. Let me know which one was your favorite from the 5. They were all so good. Kita Kyushu doesn't mess around. And alongside the port area there, Mojiko, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm gonna go walk around this little area here, the river walk, before I head back to Fukuoka. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. This is Frank from 5 AM Ramen signing out from Kita Kyushu, Fukuoka.
In the next video, we're back in Fukuoka City, and we're getting a few different interpretations of Tonkotsu Ramen while we're there. Hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for tuning in.